Hello, good morning and welcome to the Sunday Supplement. On the agenda today, the champions, they're heading to Old Trafford for the Manchester derby, but why and where did it all go wrong for Manuel Pellegrini? Nominated for his watch, if nothing else, this morning, Neil Custis, the Manchester football correspondent for The Sun, Matt Law, the football news correspondent at the Daily Telegraph, and Alison Rudd is here. She's a sports reporter with The Times. Morning to you guys, good to see you. As ever, let's have a look at the back pages of the papers quickly then. The Sunday People this morning taking the mic. This is Steve Bates' story. He says that Mike Summerby, a club ambassador at Manchester City, has been blocked from appearing on MUTV. That's Manchester United's official TV station this afternoon, amid fears that he could criticise Manuel Pellegrini. We're talking about Manchester City in a moment. The back page of the Mail on Sunday, Robin van Persie being offered £5 million to leave Manchester United, heading to Italy, according to that story this morning. The Sunday Mirror, bad company. He's not happy, the Manchester City captain, about financial fair play rules. He says that it inhibits Manchester City. It certainly feels that way, the way they've been playing of late. To the back of the Sun, Pellegrini's trash talk. He says their title bid has gone out with the rubbish, and it certainly does feel that way after their defeat against Palace last Monday. The Sunday Times, the front page of their main section, FIFA boss, this is Sepp Blatter, his secret deal for the World Cup with the Qataris. That's on pages 12 and 13 this morning. They're serialising the book from their insight team. The Sunday Mirror, what about Arsenal's performance yesterday? Certainly got the right result. Aaron Ramsey scoring, and it's Mr. Perfect, Arsene Wenger, his team winning eight for the 8th time in a row in the Premier League. Can they win the Premier League title? He says no, it's too early to say so. They are catching Chelsea, though. They've got 2 games in hand, Chelsea. They're playing QPR this afternoon at Loftus Road. We're going to talk Manchester City against Manchester United. It's at Old Trafford this afternoon, Neil. Manuel Pellegrini, let's talk about him first. Where did it all go wrong? Where has Manchester City's season unfolded? Because last season, when they were scoring goals, electrifying the country, everyone purring over their performances, and this season they haven't been able to match them.
And Chelsea and Liverpool handing them the title at the end, yeah. And the intensity that was there, I think, under the previous boss, has gone. The electricity created, the desire to drive them on. You know, everything he felt was going wrong has now gone wrong, but he can't. It doesn't look like he can motivate the team. Behind the scenes, the claim is that the training's boring. Nice guy, which is what they wanted. They felt Mancini rubbed people up the wrong way, but nice guys come first, and they look like a team that doesn't look like it's going to be facing any severe questions when they come off the pitch, win, lose or draw. But you look at the recruitment and you cannot see, if you took the team and how it was playing at the end of its first title-winning season and faced it up with this team now, there'd only be one winner. And you look at the recruitment since, I mean, and it's been something like 19 players over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and you'd struggle to get to the end of one hand to say how many of them have been a hit. You look at the figures. Mangala cost more than Aguero. Jovetic cost the same as David Silva. Milner, the same as Fernando. Nasri, the same as Navas. And Negredo and Yaya Toure cost the same. Now, but you compare those 5 with, you know, the 5 that Mancini bought and the foundation that Hughes gave them, and there's no comparison. So the acquisitions have been really poor. They haven't pushed the team on. They haven't addressed the age of the squad, which I think is the oldest in the Premier League at 29. And it looks like a team that's coming to the end of its time. Still on his day, plays great football. Aguero, though, hasn't scored now in 6. For all the possession that they had at Crystal Palace, you know, they couldn't break it down in the end. You know, there was a lot of fingers pointed at United earlier in the season for having possession and not having anything on the end of it. So I think they've almost chickens have come home to roost, and I think they have to look at Soriano, Begiristain and their hand in all this. Now, maybe if they don't fall out the top 4, I think they'll want to keep Pellegrini on because they don't want to be seen as a hiring firing club. But you look at it now, and I would fear for them this afternoon. And Liverpool have got a given 3 points on Monday, which will close the gap. Could they fall outside the top 4? I mean, I just think it's just Mancini wanted to drive them on. He wanted to push them on. He wanted them to get better. The reason he was intense, OK, sometimes maybe it went over the top, but you know, he saw the first title as the start of the climb. I think other people at the club saw it as them getting to the summit and they decided to have a picnic. Oh, yes, they won it last season based on what the team Mancini had built, and they were good last season. You can't take that away from them. But again, the second season syndrome, they've been allowed to take a step back, which is what he could see coming in his second season after winning the title.
They have won 2 titles in 3 seasons, Matt, and they've had some bad results of late, particularly away from home. But is it as bad as Neil's portraying?
I think Neil's point about the signings, I mean, as someone who doesn't forensically cover Manchester City, it strikes me that Berigistain and Soriano have got to be more to blame than Pellegrini for the way that squad's ageing together at the moment, and the way that none of the signings, as Neil said, seem to have made any massive impact for a couple of years now. I mean, interestingly, I was at Wenger last week, and we spoke to him about how you keep a squad fresh and how you keep renewing it. And he said the problem is if you have a squad with too many 29-year-olds all together, which is what he inherited at Arsenal, they all die together, was his exact words. And that, you know, looks to be what's happening at Manchester City. And it's unbelievable that over the last 2 or 3 years, they haven't been thinking ahead to just refresh that bit by bit, because you don't need to do it every year by buying kind of 5 21-year-olds or 4 22-year-olds. You just do it bit by bit over time. But now they're going to be in a situation whereby they have to try and do it all at once. And with financial fair play, that's going to be an incredibly difficult job, because to buy, you know, 4 or 5 23, 24-year-olds with the money you'd have to spend for the quality they will want, I'm not sure you can actually do it within financial fair play rules. So there's a massive job there. And I just think, you know, again, relating it to a London club, over at Tottenham, we've kind of slaughtered Franco Baldini over some of the business he's done at Tottenham. But Berigistain done terrible, terrible business.
We always talk about, excuse me, the managers, Alison, paying the price for failure. Is that because they're face-on? That's the guys we see week in, week out, day in, day out at the games. Matt and Neil just mentioned Berigistain and Ferran Soriano in the background, and they've been almost beyond criticism so far.
Well, it is simpler for them because they are behind the scenes and they can spend more time, you know, whispering into the ears of the owners than the manager can, because he's got his hands full on the training ground. But there's another factor as well, which is that I thought the significant thing was I was at Palace with you on Monday night, and a lot of the questions came into Alan Pardew were, oh, were you surprised how poor City were? Were you surprised that City didn't cause you more problems? And Pardew looked, he was visibly shocked by the questioning, and he said, they are such a classy team. I counted 23 problems they caused us because they had 23 shots. And the point I'm making is City remain a very classy team. And sometimes their spells of possession are quite attractive. What they completely fail to do, and this is where it comes down to the manager and not who's in charge of recruitment, is it wasn't working. The beautiful football was not working against Palace. There was no change at all in the pace or attitude. It was a bit like watching robots at work. It was as if we know we're good, we refuse to accept that conditions have changed. We will just keep playing the way we're playing and hope it comes good. And they were playing against a team that were full of passion and verve and industry and could sense weakness. They didn't. And that comes from the manager, who was a very, very calm man. And there's a lot to be said for that. But
that is a great point about them just continuing in sort of one way. One thing that Mancini used to do, which was very good, was tactical.
That's your fourth mention of him, by the way.
The former manager used to do was tactical changes, and a lot of people saw them as negative, but they weren't. He'd bring on a defender, but that was to release Yaya Toure further up, and he would just pose questions to the opposition. But I see with this City team, it's the same question for 90 minutes. And it can look at times very predictable, changed sometimes by the magic of Silva, by the magic of Aguero. But certainly in Europe, when he's played 2 up front and been completely overrun in the middle of the park, people have been looking at it and saying, hang on, was this not the bloke who was brought in to advance Manchester City in Europe? And at the end of, after the title-winning season, I think it was Soriano who said, you know, now it's the next step, now we go on to dominate and be the best in Europe. Well, they weren't even the best in Moscow last year. So for me, it has actually taken a step back in the last 2 years. And you were right, what Matt was saying is they haven't really addressed the evolution of the team, you know, in terms of having players there to come in to take the step in when others are ageing and going out. And I think heads were spinning the other day when Pellegrini said that about the academy, saying, you know, well, that's all right, but we might have to wait a while. You've still got to buy the best players. You know, they just spent 200 million on this thing to say we're going to be like Barcelona. It's like, well, yeah, all right, but not for now, OK. So, you know, but, you know, as Alison says, they are still a classy team. They are still, on the day, play sensational football, but 4 wins in 11 it is now. And for a team that is supposed to be progressing and going for the biggest trophies, that is not good enough.
Mm. You mentioned financial fair play as well, Matt, a little bit earlier on at the top of the show. Vincent Kompany says that it's now hindering Manchester City, that it was designed by the top clubs, by European football's elite, the established order, to prevent Manchester City succeeding in the Premier League and also in European football in the Champions League. Does he have a point?
He does have a point. I don't think it was designed against Manchester City specifically. But it does, the way financial fair play has turned out is it does seem to be just to protect the traditional kind of big clubs, as it were. And it does seem to kind of kill ambitious clubs and ambition and clubs who want to have a go at it. And the other thing, it doesn't really deal at all with, you know, crazy clubs like, you know, Leeds ownership's been terrible for years, and what's been going on there, Portsmouth, what's been going on. It doesn't seem to really address that particularly, and yet it kills ambition of clubs who have wealthy owners who want to have a go at it and want to have a go at the established elite. So I think his general point is right, but I don't think it was designed specifically with Manchester City in mind.
See, I actually think it was. And one of the people driving financial fair play, ironically, is David Gill. Now, if FIFA, UEFA want to look at...
Who was at Manchester United at the time?
Who was at Manchester United at the time, well, and still is in a smaller capacity. if UEFA or FIFA want to look at anything, they should be looking at how the Glazers can take over Manchester United, take over 500, 650 million pounds out of it and paying off or paying everything to go with the debt. What Manchester City have done in Manchester is absolutely fantastic in terms of that training ground. It's sensational. It's helped to rejuvenate an area of the city. They should be applauded for what they've done. They shouldn't be fined. They shouldn't be hit with these things. They shouldn't be restricted. And also, what financial fair play does, it stops anyone from having a dream. It stops a Southampton, it stops a Swansea or West Ham from having a dream of being able to do it themselves. What has been so evil about what Manchester City have done? Manchester United have actually, by the way, spent more money than Manchester City over the last 3 years. City should not be hit by this. They should be looking at the evil in football is what the Glazers have done to Manchester United and taking all that money out of them, as well as they've done commercially under Ed Woodward, who's brought an awful lot of money back in and has helped to stabilise the situation. But, you know, they put Manchester City into the red, Manchester United into the red. Manchester City was created into a fantastic football club that wanted to join the party and has. I
totally agree with that. And I also think when you say about killing ambition, look now, the amount of Premier League clubs that are essentially up for sale, Everton, Aston Villa, maybe Newcastle, they won't get new owners very easily now, because who's going to look at it and think, I want a piece of that? Because even if you've got a lot of money, you can't really put it all in to have a good go. If financial fair play had come in a little bit earlier, would Abu Dhabi come in on Manchester City?
No.
Probably not, because what would they have been able to do with it? So it has totally killed the dream for most clubs.
It means Bayern will win the Bundesliga every year,
exactly.
Real Madrid, Barcelona.
Well, it's killed Dortmund.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. OK, let's go back to the manager. I want to talk about United before we go into the break, but the manager, Manuel Pellegrini, Neil says he's too nice, doesn't motivate the players, they're not getting results. It's 4 wins in 11, they keep losing their away games. Do they make a change at the end of the season?
Depends what change they're able to make. I mean, there are 2 schools of thought. One is that they would quite like to go for a younger manager. This always happens in football. If you've got a manager who's sort of old and statesman-like and it's not going well, you think, oh, we'll pick up on one of the young, bright young things and get them in. So Brendan Rodgers' name has been linked with the club in the past. That type of younger manager who's supposed to be on the ascendancy. Or they go for, you know, the best manager in the business. You know, Pep Guardiola, his name doesn't go away either. He's not going to come next season. So another theory is that they probably will go with the status quo until they can get the dream package in. So I have to admit, I'd find it surprising if City did drop out the top 4 and that's how the season ended and they kept him. It would feel strange. But if they're not going to get Pep Guardiola, they might just let it keep going until they can.
But they could be an awful year if they literally just end up keeping him to wait for Pep and his contract to run out. I mean, you know, some of the players look as though they've switched off a little bit already now. What are they going to be like? The players will know if it's just a case of keeping him for a year, wait until the man you want to come along.
But then the man you bring in to replace Pellegrini will know that he's only there for a year, so that won't work very well.
I mean, the big worry for them now is what's happening down the road at Manchester United. You know, there was a time a couple of years ago where you could really see City, you know, eclipsing United for a number of years, with Ferguson leaving, what happened under David Moyes, unfairly treated as he probably was in the end. But, you know, you saw that City were going to really be in the ascendancy, but twice they've missed the chance, to grasp it and really take hold of it. And you look at what happened at Manchester United now, and that puts greater pressure on, I think, for City.
Sure. You mentioned United. That's their opponents